Oh, so wonderful to have Shawn here again. We missed you last week, Shawn, but we're so glad that you're back with us. And as many of you know, he is the founding director and chief learning officer with the Teaching Excellence Center. Shawn is a former Head Start teacher, and he's provided early childhood mental health consultation, training, and coaching. He's a certified national Mind in the Making trainer, and you can learn more about Shawn by visiting his website that I will also put into the chat as well, so you can know more about him. And you'll be hearing more about his Mind in the Making series in the upcoming months ahead. Thank you so much, Shawn. Welcome. Glad you're here. Good to see you. So I'll be monitoring some chats as they come in, and take it away.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Leah. And thank you, everyone, for rescheduling. I had a small difficulty last week with my voice, but I'm much better now. And I thought I had COVID, but I did not. So anyway, we're here and we're going to keep persevering. And I'm grateful and thankful for all of you familiar faces who've been with us throughout this series, and for the new folk who are just joining us today. Thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us with Learning with Training at First 5 Alameda. All right. So a little bit about me, for those who don't know, I'm Shawn Bryant. This is my 27th year in early childhood education. I've been a Head Start teacher, center director, manager, and mental health consultant, among other things. I just like to spotlight my Head Start experience because I'm a Head Start fan. In 2014, I left West Ed to start the Teaching Excellence Center as a coaching, training, and consulting agency. And just 5 things about me that I think is important for you to understand my lens and how I enter this work. I'm guided by culturally responsive perspectives. I think they show up everywhere with everybody, oftentimes and they're unvoiced and unnamed, which is why I lean towards Vygotsky's social cultural learning, and some other pieces about Vygotsky that I really enjoy, that recent brain science has confirmed what he knew 100 years ago. I have a Montessori credential for ages 3 to 6. So of course, Montessori's order in the environment and sensory learning shows up in all that I do. I'm always seeking to move myself and to stay grounded in, to move others closer towards family-centered practices, because in early childhood, we often talk about child-centered practices. But what I've come to know in almost 30 years is that you can't do anything with a child or young children outside of the context and conditions from which they show up with their families. So while child-centered practices are effective, we need to really understand what family-centered practices are in that larger context. I value anti-racist teaching and learning, and I'm guided by Jung's theory of our personalities, our psyche's role in personality development around our deeper thinking, and how that oftentimes shows up in our behavior or our actions. All right, I'm seeing my little buzzer there. Sorry about that. That wasn't intentional. My screen's acting up. So one of the things that I'm practicing as a strategy lately, I'm just gonna use my hand, is the notion of gratitude. And what I'm finding in the last 3 weeks that I've really been stepping into gratitude is I've actually been feeling much better just about our current national situation, about my mind, my thinking, and how I'm navigating space with other people. So as a strategy, I totally give gratitude the thumbs up. As some of you know, First 5 Alameda County did take on a few of the Tender and Tough Topic series. So the overindulgence, death, dying, and grief, and homelessness were offered earlier this year. And they're housed on the First 5 Alameda County's website. So you're welcome to go view those at your convenience. This is number 3 in our 4-part series. So I'm happy that you all have stayed with us. And the final one is next week. And we're going to talk some more about that in just a minute. To follow me, of course, go to the website and put your email there to get the latest updates around what's happening in the next coming 3 months. with Teaching Excellence Center and myself. And of course, you're welcome to follow me on social media. I do this work because I'm inspired by my friend Jade, who actually pushed me to do training. So I like to let everybody know that it was Jade and her remaining spirit and her 5 daughters that are still here that is a part of the reason why you're hearing my voice today. So virtual learning process that we're going through is to raise awareness about young children in stress and some specific tenets, to learn some new skills, and to share some of what you've learned in practice. Of course, the #1 way to make your learning real is to reflect and to journal. What we're finding is that as adults, the more we do this, it changes this. Not so much this, which I love, but the more we do this, it changes what happens here and how we act. And of course, anytime you're coached on anything you're trained on, what we find is adult learning theory says we have about a 90 to 95% chance of being really effective if we're coached on what we learned. So this screen here, some of you are familiar with, the pause the process, which is really throughout our time together, we're going to pause the process, and I'm just going to ask you to pick 2 thinking stems that activated your thinking. And this is a strategy for reflection and action, and then to share those with the larger group, because what we know is as adults, we all show up with our own lived experience, but when we share, we actually learn more from other people's wisdom and experience, which is one of our community agreements, that notion of sharing. Actually, we want you all to speak openly, but be reflective of your feelings and reactions and your thoughts. We want you to always be thinking about your role and your responsibilities, no matter what it is, in the context of this work, and of course, gratitude. So for those who've been tracking, you know, during each session, I've been showing gratitude towards all the teachers that I've met over the last 27 years and framing them as much as I can. So this is session number 3, responding to children experiencing stress, strategies for adults. And it's teacher William Gross, who we're featuring in our opening slide. So Alameda First 5 has clear goals around lots of things in their strategic plan. And 2 of those points are children are free from abuse and neglect, and children are ready for kindergarten. So what we know is that this session aligns with that perfectly around how play and stress can lower children's cortisol levels, and how guided play has an effect on children. And the more teachers and children have this back and forth interaction with play, it's a great readiness indicator for kindergarten readiness. So why this session? As we always say, it's the quality of engagement, not the quantity. And we're building children's creative spirit, their capabilities, and their competencies to deal with stressors as they self-regulate with us so they can develop self-control over a period of time. So why this session? Because we want children to gain perspective taking, initiative, be able to name their emotions, to be able to stay calm in the face of adversity. And what we know is with the help of an attuned adult, they can do that. Why this session? Because our brain response to stress can actually make or break their experiences, specifically their emotional immune system, which we're going after in these sessions over the past few weeks. All right, so just to review, we started in week 1 with relationships as the foundation. Then we talked about brain development and stress. We moved on up to developmental stress and developmentally appropriate play. Then we ended with temperament's role in relationship as really important. And our last time together, we talked about attachment and attunement. We talked about self-control and self-regulation. And we talked about stress behavior and misbehavior. And we ended with how to create a play plan. So for those of you who were there in session 2, I just want to share with you that my colleague and good friend Laura Fish, who's down in San Diego, who was a part of session 1, she actually has a YouTube page, and she created a short video. It's about 3 minutes on attunement, where if you go to her YouTube page, you can hear her talking about attunement. And I think she's done a fantastic job. I said I was going to put it on my Facebook. I just haven't gotten around to it. Laura Fish. She has a YouTube page and a Facebook page, but the YouTube video, she's talking about attunement in early childhood, and I think it's quite awesome. So our objectives for part 3 are 4 things that really fit well together. We're going to define emotional vocabulary and strategies along with it. We're going to describe strategies for stressful play, which are a lot of those strategies in emotional vocabulary. Then we're going to understand how to teach new skills, the 4 components of teaching new skills. Laura, not Nora, L-A-U-R-A, Laura Fish. Thank you for that, Sherry. And then we're going to actually start with, not end with, as adults, us developing behaviors for our personal stress management. Because my last time with you all, I heard a bunch of the teachers, and I need to just say, as I was, earlier this week, I was with some Head Start teachers in Austin, Texas. Then I was with some teachers in Mississippi and in South Carolina. And what came up for everyone was the notion of stress and COVID and people feel like they don't know how to deal with that. So I heard a lot of you all last time stating that that was big for you. So we're going to start with that. So Languag Owens is an author, he's an activist, and he's an authorized Buddhist teacher in the Kagyu School of Tibetan Buddhism. And he's considered one of the up-and-coming leaders of this generation of Buddhist teachers. And I found out, I'm just going to share this short story so you understand the context of why I ended up following him. So my cousin had passed away earlier this year. And as I was driving, I decided to drive my car by myself in Philadelphia. And as I pulled up into the church parking lot, my phone fell to the driver's side. And when I went to pick it up, it was his voice. I hadn't followed him on Instagram or YouTube or anything, but it was his Instagram video. And he was talking about allowing one's heart to break. And at that moment, I thought, God, you have jokes. So I ended up sitting in the car and listening to him talk for 3 minutes. And when I say it was exactly what I needed to walk into that church to my cousin's funeral, who was literally my first cousin. I'm the oldest of all the cousins, and she was the next one. So she was my first cousin and my first friend. And we were really, really close. And, you know, her short battle with cancer made her transition. And I started following him. And as I'm following him, I'm learning more and more. I don't follow the Buddhist practice, but a lot of what he says is pertinent to me. And one of the things that he said most recently was, if we need to rest, it's important for us to let the earth hold us. And I thought about that and thought, let me resonate on that. Let me think deeper around that. And how could that be meaningful to those of us who work with young children and families who are stressed out, to use allowing the earth to hold us as a strategy. And as I began to think about it, I thought, oh, I know exactly what he's talking about. So here are some short pointers that we can put into practice immediately or short term and long term. And all of them are things that I found helpful in my journey. And that first one, although it may be difficult now as a strategy, is to get out and move our bodies and to walk. And to walk in nature, to walk in air, even though the air where some of us are isn't that fresh right now. But the more that we can do that, we actually connect to nature, we connect to the earth, and we lower our stress. And for those who have the opportunity, we use this with young children, but it works for adults too. When we situate ourselves in nature, the closer we get to the green in nature, what we find is the better we feel. And I know some of you may struggle, like my mom does, with allergies, and the more she's around grass and she hasn't taken her Claritin, she starts to sneeze, her and one of my nephews. So if that's your struggle, you might need to use another stress management technique. But for those of you who are like me, take off your shoes, give yourself 20, 25 minutes when you can. I know outside isn't the best for people right now, but for those who can, this is a stress management technique. Another technique that works well is when we submerge ourselves in water. So you may not be able to go to the beach or the ocean right now, but if you're able to go to a place that has a pool that's indoors, I highly recommend you do that. And if you don't have that, you can do what my god kids did last week. They sent me a picture of the 3-year-old, the 5-year-old, and the 8-year-old in their bathing suits. And they were all in the bathtub because they couldn't go outside and they were hot and they had fun in about this much water in the bathtub. But what we know, again, if we can submerge ourselves and move away from all those other things, it can really rejuvenate us in ways that we often deny ourselves. And of course, meditation and yoga as a way to center oneself. And no matter who you are, where you are, the techniques and strategies that you can utilize to strengthen yourself. And probably my favorite of all is, and anyone who's had this, you know, it can change your life if you have the person who knows what they're doing. You can have leg pain, back pain, stomach pain, a headache, a runny nose. Having your foot massaged can change all of that if that person actually understands what they're doing. But as a stress management technique, if you can afford yourself that $20 or $25, there's some places that are relatively really cheap. I highly recommend for those of you where your stress has been activated over the last, well, most of this year. We're already almost in September. Don't deny yourself that ability to lessen your stress. So I want to end this component with this video that some of you, if you've been to my training before, you may have seen this. But if you haven't, this is a YouTube video that I love. Where Oprah and Ayala are talking about this notion of how many mothers, how many people who work in the service industry, they believe that they have to always show up and be everything to everybody. And Ayala basically counteracts that by saying being self-full is necessary and is not selfish. Now, in the beginning, she's going to talk about like her own personal beliefs, and she's going to mention God. So if that's not how you get down, don't internalize that part. I really want you to hear the end when she starts talking about the cup. And I want you to think about how full is your cup, and when was the last time your cup ran over? How full is your cup, and when was the last time your cup ran over? So let's listen now.
Jackie Ryan just wrote on Facebook, "I'm tired of being strong, I want to be weak." And Iana said that so many of us wear that as our badge. You know, those of you, how many of you are the strong ones?
Oh, really?
Yeah. I believe it though.
Not good.
Not
No, but
good.
they're saying, yay, you know,
You raise
strong.
their hand.
Yeah, why isn't that good?
Because then, first of all, it's probably inauthentic.
Yeah.
You know, that you always put other people before you. But you put yourself last. How you treat yourself is how you treat God. So you're putting God last. Because you are the representative of God in your life.
Come on with it.
You.
Well, that's really deep. Now that just was an aha moment.
You don't have nothing right.
Where's my writing tools, Dean? Now, I've never heard it put that way before.
Yeah, because you are the representation of God in your life. And you put you last and put other people ahead of you, which means you're putting other things and other people ahead of God in your life.
Really?
Yes, really.
But I thought God said, Jesus said, what you do to the least of these and how you treat other people, you treat your brother like yourself.
Okay, that's when you're getting into the service, but in your life,
yes, you've
got to be as good to you as you want to be to God in order to be of service to others in the world.
Thank you very much.
So you first.
So it's not selfish to put yourself first.
No, it's self-full.
It's self-full.
It's self-full to be first, to be as good as possible to you, to take care of you, to keep you whole and healthy. That doesn't mean that you disregard everything and everyone, but you want to come with your cup full. You know, my cup runneth over. Yeah. What comes out of the cup is for y'all. What's in the cup is mine. But I got to keep my cup full. It has to be full.
I like that.
And so many of us think that, you know, we're going to get brownie points in heaven, like we're going to get to sit in the box seat section, if, you know, if we just give and give and give and give. Now, here's what the Course in Miracles says, which I love. The Course in Miracles says that when you give to others to the degree that you sacrifice yourself, you make the other person a thief. Because when you start sacrificing yourself for other people, you make them a thief because they're stealing from you what you need and they don't even know it.
Get that. Okay.
All right. I personally think they shared a lot in those 2 minutes. What I want you to do now is to think about how full is your cup, and when was the last time your cup ran over? And then we're going to do something. We're going to activate our thinking stems, but we're going to share with all the folk that are on this call. So some of you are familiar with this. At the top, you're going to see the annotate, and let's see here. So you're going to, on your screen at the top, you should be able to pull down when you get to more, annotate, and then when it pops up, it's going to look like what's in that green rectangle. When you see the word text, then you're going to write on the screen by using the word text on the next screen. If you're on the phone, you won't be able to do this, but if you're on the desktop, you should be able to do this. So I'm going to start, and I'm sure Beth probably will help us to do this also by ways you release stress. So someone put walking. So however you relieve stress, I want you to share that with the rest of cooking, gardening, reading books, sleeping, meditate, exercise, skating. Oh, I used to love to skate. I haven't skated in years. Jazzercise, praying, meditating, breathing, running, pickleball. You might need to explain to me what that is. I'm not sure what pickleball is. Outside activities like skating, listening to music. I love listening to music. Walking, working out, journaling, cleaning my room, and turning my candles. Card making, wow. Rock balancing. Is that Michelle Grant Groves talking about rock balancing?
There's also some people putting some things in the chat box, like breathing, cleaning. I want them to come over. I got
okay.
stress. Family time.
Right. Hiking. Talking to a friend. Awesome.
I like awakening and taking care of self is not selfish. That's really great.
That is so true. Okay. So what I'm seeing here is that, again, we all know, most of us know how to release stress. And we have lots of strategies in our toolbox for how to take care of ourselves. The hard part becomes using those tools and using those strategies. So what we've got to do is figure out a way to use those tools and use those strategies to reduce our stress load in these trying times. Awesome. Thank you all for that. I appreciate you all participating and jumping right in with the annotate. I'm going to clear the screen and then move on to the next one. Thank you again. And of course, our big umbrella that holds all of this is what Beth mentioned earlier, is that one need not be a therapist to be therapeutic, and we're holding that as a strategy throughout our time together and throughout your time with children and families, with your colleagues, that it's not always about sending children to someone else, but in the context and conditions of your relationship, if we can attune to them and they can feel felt through their interaction with you, you know, the effects on their body and their mind and how we can contribute to their well-being, what we find is that works. That comes up in all the research as a number one strategy, a positive, attuned relationship with an adult. Comes up everywhere, regardless of the child's gender, regardless of their race, regardless of their ethnicity, regardless of their socioeconomic status. Having that attuned adult becomes a therapeutic milieu for all young children. And of course, we're defining child stress by, again, understanding that stress not only broadens safe practices when we understand it, but it helps us as the adult to create the right conditions for which children can prosper. And what we need to know is that it can be perceived difficulties. If they're perceived as a difficulty by the child, then that means it's real. Even though you may know it's not a real threat, if it's a threat to the child, then it's a real threat to your relationship. So over the course of our time, we met Naeem, and then we met Zoe. Today, we're going to meet Wyatt and Nevaeh in their stress story as we move forward. So we're going to jump right in to Wyatt's stress story. We're going to jump right into Wyatt's stress story. So I'm going to read the stress story for you all, but I'm only going to read it because I see some folk on their phone, and it may be hard to read it on your phone. So Wyatt is 4. He hits Mark so hard that Mark falls off his chair during lunch. He says that he sat too close to him and he wanted more fruit. This behavior seems to work for Wyatt. Hitting Mark, I'm adding to it, and Mark falling. At home, Wyatt has been pushed and teased by his grandfather about his eating habits. It's granddad's version of sarcasm, and we're going to hear about sarcasm a little bit later. His behavior, hitting back, does make his grandfather distance himself from him at home. Because remember, the grandfather thinks the sarcasm is funny and cute, not realizing that this becomes a stress story for Wyatt. In his response to Mark, Wyatt has experienced a stress response with a coping strategy that you all read above. What might be the cause of Wyatt's stress? Someone should just take 20 seconds to think about this. And then what I want someone to do is to raise your hand, and Leah will unmute you, say your name, I'm going to hear your response. Maybe 2 people might do it. What might be the cause of Wyatt's stress? What could teachers do to support Wyatt? When as a coach or director or someone else, how could you support those teachers in Wyatt's preschool? Take about 20 minutes to think about it, and then the brave soul who wants to share.
And I think actually people are able to unmute themselves.
Okay,
So.
okay, I wasn't sure, Leah. We did it that way. All right. So it looks like, I may not say this right, Romalie Gavino unmuted themselves?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Romley.
Romley, thank you.
Yeah, I had this happen in my class too a few years ago. I had this issue with my student, and I've noticed that this time it was the older siblings. They have been pushing him around, and they have been doing these things about his eating habits. But what might be the cause of Wyatt's stress? It's the idea. It's his feeling that he's not accepted as he is, and then he is teased by his grandfather. It's the teasing that's causing his stress. And what could teachers do to support him? It's I think it's teaching him a coping mechanism to cope with the teasing. It's teaching him how he could react to the teasing. So when he is told about his eating habits, so we tell him how he copes with it, with not using his hands, but he can tell them. He can tell them what he wants them to. You can tell him what he can do in response to the teasing that's not pushing.
Thank you, Romley. So I saw that, well, it was Sonia and Tina, but Sonia, so, okay, so I see Sonia and Tina both unmuted themselves. Thank you, Romley. So if you can mute yourself, Romley, and then Sonia can go, and then Tina can go.
Yeah, hi. I think it's very important to, you know, have our kids, you know, stand up for themselves, not in the, you know, mean way, but just to, you know, like really, you know, teach them to speak up. Like if you don't like it, like for example, on that side, you know, grandpa is really, you know, teasing him, which is inside him, she doesn't tell the grandpa how he's making her feel being teased about. And, you know, and she's holding all that inside her, you know, it's kind of like bottle up feelings, like, you know, she been putting all those feelings on that little bottle until, you know, he goes to school and then he brings that out. She
Yes.
brings that out. So it's, you know, I really, you know, work with my kids on, you know, express yourself. You don't like it, you know, tell it, say it, you know, I don't like the way you're talking to me, or I don't like the way you took that from me, from my hands. You know, you can ask, or you can say, excuse me, you know, use your words instead of using your body. You know, I always, you know, tell them, you know, your hands are for being nice, for touching, for playing, for eating, for, you know, drawing, you know, for grabbing the jump rope or the ball, you know, not for hitting your friends. You know, your body is for you to keep, you know, it's not for other people to be, you know, push. And, you know, it's, I think it's hard, you know, for kids to do that. But if you keep telling them, you know, like reminders every day, you know, let's use our works, let's use, you know, our bodies is for moving around, for jumping around, not for pushing our friends.
Thank you, Sonia. And
yeah,
we're going to dig deeper into that around using your words in how that, I think that was a perfect one before Tina speaks around what we're lifting up today, that notion of use your words. They oftentimes need adults to give them the words and to model the words. And that's a big takeaway today. So thank you, Sonia.
Yeah, and there's even a comment in the chat about children not having emotional vocabulary, and giving voice to the children is very important. So everybody's really thinking in the same line.
Tina?
Hi, I'll be quick because I kind of, what's been said already is similar to what I experienced from, you know, just seeing the story and hearing about it. But I think for Wyatt, a lot of what he experienced is just learned behavior. He's learned to, he sees how, he doesn't like how his grandfather treats him, but that's his way of, he's learned his behavior from an adult who's supposed to be like a person in his life that teaches him, guides him, and gives him good, thorough examples. But he's learned that, and he's learned how to react in a negative way. And as teachers and parents and loved ones that are nurturing to the child, that's where we have to show him how to direct that behavior, how to redirect that behavior, by giving him clear-cut positive examples, and even just talking to him, giving him that confidence, and showing him that there's another way to express your feelings and express how he's feelings about wanting more fruit, as an example. And also allowing the other child who actually was pushed off the chair to express how that made him feel, so that Wyatt knows and understands that, you know, it's not good for me to go around pushing a child off the chair. So I think it's really important, especially with adults in his life, that we show him and lead by example, and also just redirect the behavior in more of a positive way.
Thank you, Tina. So Antoinette, I see you unmuted yourself. Did you want to share?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so this is going to be the last share, and then we're going to move forward. Thank you, Tina,
Sure.
Amli, and Sonia. Go ahead, Antoinette.
I just wanted to share, probably with this scenario, this was not the first time that Wyatt had this type of situation. And so if teachers can think like ahead of time and really be intentional about preparing their children about what do we do if someone is too close to you at school? How can we use our words to let that person know you're too close without pushing? Because it says later that his grandfather responds to the hitting and the pushing, so he gets his way. So that's how he think, if I need space, I'm hitting you, I'm pushing you. But if teachers are more intentional in just preparing your kids ahead of time, then they know they need some reminders and, you know, some prompts so that they know, okay, these are the ways that I can express myself without, you know, putting hands on someone else. So.
Thank you for all four of those. So when I'm intentionally not going to do is, quote unquote, answer it. What we're going to do is we're going to, as we move through the presentation, we're going to get other strategies that are appropriate responses to support Wyatt. Okay? So I thank you for being brave and opening up your mic and sharing, because you actually make the presentation, I think, that much richer. So because you are brave enough to do that, all four of you win a Visa gift card. So take a picture of the screen, the four of you. You need to email me. I'm not going to chase you down, and Leah will confirm that. So if you don't want it and you don't send the email, that's fine. But if you do want it, you need to send me an email around where you want the card sent, either to your home address or to your work address. And once I get it, send it out, and we'll send you a copy that it's been shipped, and it usually says on there when it should arrive at the address. All right, so thank you all, and I appreciate your feedback, and the people who wrote in the chat. We appreciate you too. So I follow Dr. Bessel. He's one of many people who I follow, and I really like how he presents work and how he challenges a lot of the long-held beliefs that we have about trauma and stress and mental health, because he thinks a lot of it isn't working and needs to be reevaluated. But he made many statements, but one of them was, trauma comes back as a reaction, not as a memory. Trauma comes back as a reaction, not as a memory. So just something for us to hold on to as we understand child stress, around how it can resurface. And Beth put an awesome link for him in the chat box. Thank you, Beth. And there's some awesome YouTube videos that are short and succinct that he has on YouTube. So we're going to step into emotional language. All right. So what we find is that there are 6 types of emotions that are universal. So regardless of your gender, regardless of who you are, regardless of your race or ethnicity, your tribe, your nation, your clan, regardless of what climate you live in, regardless of what language you speak, what we found is that we all show up at birth with these basic 6 emotions that are hardwired, meaning they're in our brains. They are in our brains. And all of these slides are in the Dropbox link. So I know Leah sent the Dropbox link earlier. So if you didn't get it, Leah, if you can put that in again, the slide deck is in the handouts folder. And if you don't get that, then the link that she sent you to join the Zoom, if you scroll down, she's highlighted a link for you to click that'll take you to the Dropbox link with these in there. I saw some people writing vigorously, and I didn't want you to write something that you can just look at on your computer. So Drs. Gail Joseph and Phil Strain, who both were largely responsible over the last 17 years for much of what was CSEFEL, which has become Teaching Pyramid. Gail was a Head Start teacher, and now she's a researcher at the University of Washington, who still does a lot of national work around social-emotional learning. So they define social-emotional literacy, or emotional literacy, as the ability to recognize, the ability to label, and the ability to understand feelings in myself and in others. So succinctly, what they're saying is, it is very important to teach vocabulary. And emotional vocabulary is an integral component of any preschool curriculum, well, at least it should be, but it's oftentimes overlooked. And it's oftentimes overlooked because what we haven't developed as adults, and I can say I was guilty of that, a repertoire of emotion words to go along with the feeling that we were experiencing. So simply defining emotional vocabulary is really associating words with emotions. When we associate a word with emotion, we really have an emotional vocabulary. So our job is to introduce the initial 6, but to get past those And we introduce the initial 6, because those initial 6 actually help us to relate our internal state. So what I mean by internal state is what we're feeling on the inside. So if I have a word for that, then what I can do is I can engage in discussion. I can express myself to adults and to the outside world, and most definitely my peers, as I'm learning to socialize and to build positive socialization behaviors. Excuse me. Having emotional vocabulary and emotional language is a part of that. And it's our responsibility to model that and to teach it directly. It doesn't just kind of fall by the wayside. We have to teach it directly the same way we teach math, the same way we teach literacy. We've got to teach emotional vocabulary in the exact same way, or children won't get it. Another piece that I think is really important is many of you who are early childhood folk, you've heard about Vygotsky, you've heard about scaffolding, which is what he gets a lot of credit for, but he did a lot of other great things that we sometimes often miss. And one of the things that he understood was what was happening in our brains. This was way before we had MRIs that told us what part of the brain was lighting up. And what Vygotsky understood was the connection between emotional language and vocabulary and how it's connected to our limbic system, that yellow part of the brain where our emotions live. And what he understood was the more we can express an emotion, we lessen our stress load. I'll say it again. The more a child and adult can express their emotion, we lessen our stress load. I'll give you an example of myself. And I tell you, everything that I train on, I make sure I try it out so that I can say I have evidence that it worked. As an adult, one thing, a strategy that I began to use before most of you met me, well, if you ask Margaret Jareen, who's the education specialist at First Five, she's known me for 20 years. She knew me before I had a large repertoire of how to handle my emotions. But what I know is if I'm in a situation and I'm feeling a strong emotion, if I say, I'm angry, I'm gonna use a simple one. If I say, I'm feeling embarrassed, what I notice is, once I do that, I actually feel the stress leaving my body. So it goes back to that thing I've said in every session, Dan Siegel, we name it to tame it, which is neuroscience. Vygotsky knew this over 100 years ago though, but it's the basic part of how we all show up. So if we think of toddler programs and preschool programs as early settings that should be preparing children, not just for kindergarten, but ways to be in the larger world, it becomes not just their families, but our responsibilities to make sure that not just in the beginning, but throughout their program experience, we're helping them develop and practice their emotional vocabulary, all right? So we can no longer overlook this. So let's get a little bit deeper with this. I'm waiting for my slide to move. Uh-oh, too many moves. So as a strategy, what we just talked about was everything in the green in the middle is how children show up. We oftentimes can name those emotions for them. And through, experience, they pick up on them and what they mean because they're hardwired in our brain, remember? But it's the ones in the blue and the ones in the purple that we actually have to teach. We have to set up situations, circumstances to teach the word, to model the word, and to make sure that they have repeated practice so they understand those words and more. But here's the piece. I can't teach something that what I haven't taken into myself, which actually may mean we've got to look at these words and say, how do I define this word? How do I use this word? Do I ever use this word in my vocabulary? How does this come up? Do I feel this way? We've got to examine ourselves so that we can then give it to young children. And while they're all important, the biggest one, and some of you know it's important, is teaching children this empathy piece. Because empathy is one of the few emotions that actually happens on the outside before it happens on the inside. Empathy is the one that we have to see modeled. The baby's crying and I see someone pick up the baby. The dog hurt himself and I see someone help the dog. The plant is dying I see someone water the plant and say, we have to give the plant more sun. So it's the care of something outside of oneself, which is how empathy is internalized, which is fundamentally different, which is why that one's a big one. I should have highlighted it in yellow. They're all big, but empathy really happens on the outside before it can happen on the inside, where the others don't necessarily occur that way. So some emotions are hardwired. We still have to teach them, but some have to be directly taught because children won't have a background knowledge for it and won't have an understanding of what we call level 2 and level 3 and level 4 emotion words. All right? This is a strategy. So in this next video, it's only about 40 seconds long. So I want you to pay attention to a few things. The strategy here is social referencing. The little boy is going to keep asking his teacher, they're using a job board around where he's going to go. And this is the special education classroom. It's an inclusion classroom. And he keeps telling her, are you angry? Are you angry? And she says, no, I'm not angry. He's using social referencing, which is he's paying attention to, you know, how she's looking, the tone of her voice, her facial expressions. He's gathering the emotional information from her. And we oftentimes can easily miss this as an adult. So if children are unsure, they're going to come to you and they're going to say, are you upset? Are you happy? Are you sad? And they do it in this way that says, I'm not really sure because I'm still what? Gathering the knowledge to do that. So as the adult, we've got to understand that we're the emotional guide on that path for young children to social referencing. So you may be saying, Shawn, well, how do I define social referencing? It's largely emotional communication. It is. It's emotional communication from children who are seeking emotional information, largely on our facial expression and our tone of voice. So let's listen to this quick one. It's not very loud, so you might need to turn your volume all the way up, but it's really short.
See. Ooh, in the home center. Yes. Yep, Kanzi is in the home center. Do you want to go there later? Later? We're gonna wait and we'll play in the art center first. Nope, I'm not, man. How do I feel? Look at, how do I feel? Happy? Happy. Good work. Yep. I am happy. I will sit down with you. What are you gonna make?
All right.
See.
But as you can see what he did, what did he say to her? And then she said, I'm not. What she said was, how do I feel? What she should have said, how do I look? She said, how do I feel? And then she smiled and put her finger on her chin, which is a technique. But when you're being recorded, you can get nervous. But it was really, look at my face. How do I look? I'm smiling. He needed all of that information to develop what the cues around, oh, you're not mad. You're not angry. Because he was looking at her flat affect thinking, you're angry or you're mad. And she wasn't. Really important for young children who are developing that or who haven't had effective models around social referencing and social cues. All right, so there are 4 simple but powerful strategies. Well, it's one strategy and there are 4 components, I should say, that work together on how to teach emotional language. And that first one is to instruct them, but we need to be careful about pacing. So for myself, that was probably the biggest part of my practicum teaching, becoming a Montessori teacher, was my pacing, because I was used to doing things fast. And every time I would get my reports back and it would say, you must slow down, you must slow down, you move really fast. And it was the hardest part for me to actually slow down to demonstrate or instruct a lesson around what we wanted the children to learn around skill building. Making sure that before I started, I have the right language. I pulled out vocabulary words. I know what I'm going to say. And this is short and succinct. This isn't long. These are very short sentences we're using. And of course, we know that if we add visuals, children remember 10% of what they hear and 85% of what they see. So if we add the visual or the picture or the actual item with the language, it increases what? their capacity to internalize it. Very, very important that we've got to move away from this long-held 19th century piece of when I speak as the adult, children will listen. I mean, children will learn. Well, they will listen and learn. And what we find is it becomes very, very difficult for them. And the ones who need us to actually instruct by using the appropriate language, slowing our pacing down, and using visuals, we start saying they're stressed or they have challenged behavior because we haven't provided them with what we would call universal design, all the supports they need in the context of the learning environment. The next step is to model. And modeling is really about demonstrating and sequencing. And we're going to talk about sequencing next week. I totally skipped over some things earlier where I wanted to tell you all next week, because on the agenda that went out originally, it said that we were going to do typical and atypical development last week. And I realized that I should have had that with modifications and adjustments and family engagement, which are all going to be next week. So next week, we're going to do family engagement, modifications, adjustment, typical and atypical, and the actual environment around how all of those things can stress children out or not stress children out. So I forgot to mention that earlier. Modeling is that second strategy. That third strategy is what we call practice. Opportunities for children to practice the skill or behavior we're wanting them to learn. So in the K-12 system, they call it the gradual release. I basically call it, I do, we do, I stop and you do, and then I observe and acknowledge you. So it's really a four-step process around practice. I'm practicing so that your child can see what the expected skill or behavior is. We do it together. Now you do it and I observe. I acknowledge you and give you what positive feedback. Perfect example. So I'm thinking of Diego. He used to run around the room a lot. And in our classroom, we never chase children. So I would just kind of look at Diego and say, would you please go back and do that again? So if he was on one side of the room and he ran to the other, I would just give him a nice look once he met my eyes and said, I need you to go back and do that again. And he knew what that meant. He knew he needed to go back to where he started and now walk across the room to where he wanted to go. But what I would often do is say, can I walk with you? And he would say, yeah. And I would just walk with him to where he was going. Now, what? You did it. Now I'm going to watch you be successful. So when you leave, you're going to do what? Probably walk to where you need to go. All right? So that's just one example of how we help children practice as a strategy. And that fourth one, which it's probably going to skip. My wheel is spinning for some strange reason. Oh, it skipped it. Is to acknowledge, meaning we repeat it over and over and over and over and over again. Remember, repetition is what children need. We get bored with it, but their brain and their learning desires it and craves it. We get bored with the repetition. It's part of the learning for them. All right, so those are the four pieces to actually how we teach emotional language with young children. And after we're gonna have a 2-minute break, and after the break, I'm gonna show you what some teachers are actually doing. So in this next clip, we're gonna look at a Head Start teacher who's actually helping children to differentiate safe and unsafe. So she's teaching the skill many times. So as you watch, tell yourself, is she instructing? Is she modeling? Do the children have time to practice? And does she acknowledge? Think of those four things in this short clip.
Let's see if he can put it in the, is it safe for play?
No. No.
Raji, can you play with these? Is it safe for play, or should you keep away?
Keep away.
Keep away. Raji, put it in here and keep away. Put it right in there. Here comes our next one. Let's see if Jenna can do this one. What do you think, Jenna?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it safe for play, or should we keep away?
Play. Away.
Keep away from the salad?
No.
Or we can eat the salad. Can we touch it?
No, we can only eat it.
We only eat it. We don't play with it, but we just eat it. So Jenna, here you go. This is safe for us. Do you think it's safe?
Yes.
Say yes.
Yes.
Say yes. So she can put it in the safe for play. Here Here comes the next thing. Woo! Everybody say, hot, hot coffee. Jamal, what do you think about hot coffee? Do we play with hot coffee?
No.
Keep away.
No.
All right. Here comes the next one.
Clown.
Everybody say what the name of these are.
Clown.
Oh, you really know it, Janila. Let's see if Janila knows. Is it safe for play or keep away? Wow. Uh-oh.
Keep away.
Esther, are you allowed to play with the stove?
No.
Let's see if she says it's safe for play or keep away. What do you think, Esther? She's really thinking. We're giving her a moment to think about, should she play with the stove and touch the oven?
Keep away.
So Esther, will you put it?
Keep away.
Let's see if she knows. Oh, Shawn is helping you.
When I touch the stove, I said,
Woo! Woo! That's right. We don't touch the stove. Here comes our next one.
Bella, you can.
Oh, slippers! Ballet slippers! Kayla, what do you think? Is it safe for play or should we keep away? Put here.
What is my key away?
Kayla says you can put that on your feet. You can play with those, she said. Jihan, what do you think? Should we keep away from the toothbrush? Or,
No.
or is it safe to use?
Safe away.
Oh, you guys give Gianna thumbs up. Okay, one more. What in the world is this?
It's for your hair. It's for your hair. Mommy.
Everybody do your hair like this. Whose mommy has a curling iron?
I do.
Oh my,
Me.
whoa, wait a minute. Is this
Me.
hot?
Yeah.
Oh, can we play with the curling iron? Joshua, is it safe for play?
No, keep
Oh,
away.
everybody say keep away.
Keep away.
Righty.
Wait. Keep away.
Oh, you guys, do you see the steam? Wait a minute. Do we take a bath?
No.
Everybody takes a bath, right?
Keep away.
But wait a minute, if the water is so hot that it's making all that steam, can we get in the water that's so hot? Can we? No, wait, put it in. Keep away. Oh, you guys, pat your head right here. Look at your son. Yes.
When I was in the bathtub, the water was really hot.
Was it so hot that it burns you?
Yeah, my grandma did that to me.
And then you have to say, Grandma, we have to cool it down.
Away.
Right, keep away.
Keep away.
Good, you told your mom.
My dad did it.
Boys and girls, you guys have really learned what to keep
Let's
away with
try it.
and what is safe for play.
But my bath was hot but not steaming.
Yeah, it was hot but not steaming. That's the way you
It got
do it.
hot and steaming.
Hot but not steaming. Because if it's steaming, keep away. But if it's just a hot bath, then we can play in the bath. But if it's steaming, keep away. Hey, boys and girls, can you guys all give me a shake like this? Shake, come on. Show me, shake.
You
Shake,
made the
shake,
water.
shake. Shake your hands up high. Shake your hands down low. Shake your hands up high. Shake your hands up low. We are going to learn a new song today. So what I would like you to do is come into this ocean so you can see the song words. Thanks, Kamari, for your help. Oh, you guys are so great at following directions. I asked you to come into the ocean and you came right over. Thank you. Can you push play on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen? We're going to learn... Oh! And then turn the volume up.
All right, so we basically saw a bunch of things happen. For those, let me give you some context for those who weren't in the first session. This Head Start classroom had 24 children, 3 teachers, and 11 different languages were spoken by the children, in addition to English, in the classroom, because many of them came from homes where one parent had one language and the other parent had another language, then they shared English. So when we talk about multiple languages being acquired, a lot was happening for these young children in this very diverse Head Start classroom in the Bay Area in California. So what I want you to do now is, as you were listening and watching, when you think of instructing, modeling, practicing, and acknowledging, just type something you heard happen around either instructing, either around modeling, practicing, and acknowledging. We'll just take about 20 seconds to do that. All right, let me look. It says modeling fear. Someone put modeling fear. Did we see anything else around instructing, practicing, acknowledging? Acknowledging children's answers. Pointing out that the little girl was thinking. Acknowledging the child's help. She also acknowledged they were good at following directions. Practicing how to say words. Providing visuals. Ability to process, that's right. Building language. Practice enthusiasm. All of those things. She was clear around what she wanted them to learn. So the instruction, the modeling, they had multiple opportunities to practice around safe to play, not safe to play, and she did a lot of acknowledging. Denise says, I love that she allowed the children to respond while one child tried to think of the appropriate response to her question about the item. I believe this gives children who are shy or learning a new language to look to other children as a model to help them answer more confidently. I agree with you, Denise. She was instructing, acknowledging the children and provided visuals, provided time to think and show understanding. Repetition, that's right, Regina. She did model patience. She practiced turn taking and giving someone a chance to speak and respond. Her enthusiasm kept the children engaged in terms of building vocabulary. Yep, all of those things. See, you all were able to see it. They were all there in this piece, and it worked so well because what happens is Rebecca, Margarita, and Anna were really good about maintaining their structure, that they were consistent about their routines and their practices and their schedule, so the children always knew what to expect, which makes it easier to do what? To then lift the learning to teach. Okay? Thank you all for that. So here in this one, they're really just, and I got this from some more early childhood special ed folk around the 8 strategies around what we can do around instructional strategies to build emotional language over time. So describing emotions and their meaning, labeling emotions, modeling, defining the meaning of the words, stating certain words. We can fill in the blank. We can, offer word definitions. And when children use words incorrectly, we can give them the correct emotion definition for that word that they've used incorrectly. And what they found is if we do these things over time, in addition to those 4 clear practices, these strategies help build children's emotional vocabulary. So here's just a short video by Whitney that I'm actually going to skip. So basically what you're going to see, because I'm going to show a picture of this later, the children are coming to school. So this is the beginning of the school day. If you look to the far right, she has these cans. So what children do is they find their name, on the stick with their picture, and they put it in the can and say that's how they feel. And then she just has about, you know, a short exchange with them around how they feel. And if someone has a strong emotion, Whitney makes sure that she comes back to that child to check in as a centering activity that they do every single day.
Oh my God.
I'm skipping it because I'm paying attention to time. And I want us to focus more on Nevaeh. So I'm going to read this one for you, and we're going to do the same thing we did before we get into two more things before we're going to have a short break. Nevaeh is 4. She participates in a part-day preschool class with the school district and a special day class. Nevaeh was in a car accident. The family car was hit by a truck. Nevaeh seems afraid of all large moving vehicles. Neighborhood walks frighten her. She is cautious and anxious during outdoor time. Her family reports she gets nervous in the car on the way to school. She often screams when she sees fast-moving trucks through the playground fence. Nevaeh's reaction is a stress response to her coping patterns that are overly reactive. We know the cause of her stress. What could teachers do to support her throughout the day? As a coach or director or mental health consultant, how would you support the staff? How would you support the staff? So this time, instead of us taking 4, just the first 2 people who unmute themselves, say your name, and we'll take the first 2 folks. And hopefully it'll be new people. Let's not have to repeat the same people. Okay, it looks like Simone unmuted themselves, and then Christina. So Simone and then Christina. Thank you both.
I'm gonna take a shot at that. I think in terms of supporting the teachers, first of all, letting the teachers know the situation, and then if they know in advance, so they know they're going outside and they know they're like our yard is on a busy street, so we would try to like prep Nevaeh in advance to just let her know, okay, we're going outside now. Cars may be passing by. The teachers are going to be be beside you. So if you feel a little fearful, we're right beside you, and we'll be there to help you through it. So I'm just thinking of just prepping her in advance for one, notifying the teachers, and in some situations, if we can avoid it, try to put her in a different area, as opposed to always, because like some kids like outside, they like the loud noise. So that's okay for them, but if loud noise is her trigger and fast moving cars, maybe we could find a different area for her to play in.
Thank you, Simone. Appreciate that. Christina?
Yeah, I would, similarly, what I was going to say was really working the teachers through giving Nevaeh opportunities to express her emotions and acknowledge the fear, you know, helping her be able to express that fear and express what her emotions are around it, what she's feeling around it when she sees those cars, and just acknowledging, I think giving her opportunities to talk about it in a safe way, maybe one-on-one when you have those opportunities, and when you hear her screaming, acknowledging, yeah, that can be scary, and I know that you went through that scary experience, but giving her, you know, empowering her to be able to talk about it and work through that, and utilizing some of those other strategies. And then, you know, sometimes I think the other thing that I'm thinking is when another child is anxious or screaming, that might, you know, that can cause other children around them to kind of feel that fear. So when possible, giving her opportunities to step away from that and talk to that and be able to express herself, and allowing other children to know it's okay to give her space or when she's feeling afraid, that kind of thing.
Definitely. I agree with both of your responses, Simone and Christina, around charging all the adults who are there with supporting, not because oftentimes it becomes one adult's responsibility, but so that everyone knows we're all going to support Nevaeh on this stress journey. And that oftentimes will mean not denying her access to the play yard outside. But one thing I actually saw an early childhood educator do with a child who had a similar situation, and would kind of gravitate toward the fence, because that happens. She would gravitate toward the fence to watch the moving vehicles go by. And what they began to say, the teacher and the child, and then you looked, and there were 4 children at the fence talking to the cars going by, saying, "Slow down, cars." These were the children. "You're driving too fast." They were really affirming their voice in this playful way in the context of preschool, but really arming them with what they never had before, the ability to counteract that this truck is moving down the street. It feels enormous, is shaking the ground in many instances, and it's going too fast. And giving children the voice and the agency to speak to that, I saw it as being really, really powerful for those groups of children around helping them to act on what they could act on with a supportive adult. But definitely everything you both said around supporting the child with all the teachers, validating her fears, because that becomes important for you to name what the experience is and why she's fearful, instead of pretending like it's not happening, won't make it go away. And the other part I think is giving Nevaeh time and giving yourself time, because as teachers, we oftentimes want, I'm giving her help, so this is going to change. It might take all school year. It might take this school year and next year. And there may be opportunities and times when Nevaeh isn't afraid or is afraid and you don't notice it. So all of that can happen. Or she'll step into not being so fearful, and then step back on another day to being very, very fearful. So understanding that if you are a Head Start program or a QRS program, making sure you're in communication with your mental health consultant around having a plan in place for how to support the child and the family. And I think all of those things wrap together in not just one strategy, but multiple strategies together is how we want to support Nevaeh. The one thing that I probably would have a different conversation with the staff about is really talking to Nevaeh about the neighborhood walks. If the neighborhood walks really frighten her, I'm not so sure as a teacher, as a director, I would want her on those walks so immediately until she built up some more capacity around doing that. And if we did do it, I know some programs, the kids go on a walk and they're on the walk for 20 minutes. Her walk might be 4 minutes. So for me, that was the one that I would probably push back on, around us not pushing her into something that isn't helpful at the moment. So I see some people wrote in the chat, always trying to remember that stress can be manifested in many ways, and that sometimes Nevaeh's fear may be obvious, but at other times her cues may be more subtle. Definitely, Michelle. I love that, the other children supporting. To take the notion further, create signs with children, slow down, drive safe. Children presents, drive safely. Definitely, that could become a whole project. That isn't so much, we're doing this because of Nevaeh, but we all see and hear and experience the trucks driving down the street very quickly. Yes, it could take a long time for her to overcome her fears, definitely. But we know the number one ingredient there that helps children, is a supportive adult. So as a supportive adult, if we're not just physically present, but we're giving voice to emotions, we're naming them and modeling, all of that becomes the support and help that Nevaeh can benefit from. So thank you, Simone, and thank you, Christina. You were our 2 winners. So take a picture of this, Simone and Christina, if you want the gift card, and then email, and we will get out to you ASAP your $25 Visa gift card. All right, so while they're doing that, Josephine Lee said it could be really helpful for Nevaeh to have opportunities to play with cars and trucks, definitely in free play. This would give her a lot of control over her story with the supportive teacher, definitely. Share with her age-appropriate books related to safe transportation. All of those things are a part of her plan. This other person says, I think that getting the family involved in sharing their feelings about the accident and letting Nevaeh know that she and others were in the car is safe will also help. Those things were happening. We're talking about, and those things, Denise, are actually on point. They were happening with the family in treatment, where we're really focusing on what can we do and what will we do, what can and will we do at the preschool, because oftentimes those additional supports happen outside of the preschool, but that's definitely on point in the beginning there. See, we know what to do in early childhood. We're a skilled bunch. So before our short break, I just wanted to, we have 2 more slides before a short break. As a strategy, really knowing the difference between a tantrum and a meltdown, because what we find is most of us see the same behaviors, kicking, screaming, shouting, cursing, stumping, biting, and the list goes on, because they look very, very similar, but they're coming from different places. Most of us are familiar with tantrums in children and unfortunately adults. They're goal-oriented around unmet wants. You know, children typically notice the adults if we're paying attention or not. The behavior often stops when they're given what they're having a tantrum about. And while giving them what they're having a tantrum about is not the solution, unfortunately, sometimes when they're not with you, that happens to young children. A warning sign, as you can see on the screen, for strategy, for tantrum, so that you can pay attention, is that if we're watching and we know that child well, we know those children well, and we know that their inability to delay gratification when they want to achieve something results in a tantrum, that's our window of opportunity, which is really different than a meltdown, which is really the system of overwhelm and overload that a child can't control. It's not goal-oriented. They need our support as adults to help the behavior stop. They're reacting to something, and oftentimes it's unnamed. Sometimes it's even unknown to some children who are having a meltdown. And we're going to get deeper into that next week when we're going to spotlight children on the autism spectrum just a little bit in their meltdowns and how they emanate from a different place. So I like to help adults understand a meltdown by using the analogy of a pitcher of water. Most of the time, you can control the flow of the water as you're filling the pitcher a little at a time. But sometimes if you cut the water on too strong and the flow is too powerful, the pitcher overflows before you can get control of the water, and the water spills over and it spills out. And that's essentially what happens to young children who are having a meltdown. So I'm just going to talk to you quickly about our response to a meltdown and our response to a tantrum. So it's important for children for us to lower our bodies if they're having a meltdown so that they can see our eyes, or we're even sometimes below them, so that they can hear. We need to speak in short sentences and not overwhelm them. Asking questions during the meltdown is really not a positive or productive thing. We should be reassuring children with very short words and not asking them questions. The third thing is to slow your rate of speech and your movement while you're trying to convey reassurance, care, safety, and support. That takes time. Here's the other big piece. Never go and support a child who's having a meltdown if you can't afford to stay there through the process. If I'm having a meltdown, what I don't want to do is have Beth come and help me. And then she says, oh, I have to go. And then she says, Leah, now you come help him. So if Beth comes and help me, she needs to be committed to staying there to support me until I'm through that whole cycle. Very, very important. We don't want to do
Here, Shawn, I'm here.
Right? We don't want to do a handoff in the middle of a meltdown. Okay, so it's really important for us to know that, and I know some of you understand that. And then once the child is calm, that's when we want to offer, let's breathe together. Let's watch our chest go up and down. You might want to give them some loving touch. Then you can focus on things that, most teachers now have all those things in their classrooms It's at that space that you're paying attention and they're cued into you that you can say, would you like to go look at the calming glitter jar? That's when we start offering those things, not at the beginning, but once you know that they've gone through that cycle and they may say yes or no, then again, we should be supporting them in going to get out of that mode. And for some children, they may want to talk about it. For some children, they just might want to sit with you. It depends on the individual child, okay? The other thing that I find as we're supporting the young children, and this is something that I often use before I go and help that child, I take a really big, deep cleansing breath myself so that I can make sure that I'm getting to that place of calm so that I can connect with them. I don't want to rush over if I haven't connected to calm first, because then I won't be helpful. And we like to call that now, we're going to practice what we teach. So I'm taking that breath because I want to practice what I'm attempting to teach. Very, very important. And then with tantrums, essentially, you don't want to fall into the trap of giving them what they're having a tantrum about. We want to put their feelings into words. You seem really upset that you want more of whatever you can't have. You seem really upset that it's time to leave the playground. Wow, I know it's hard to clean up when we're having such a good time playing, but we have to clean up because we all have to what? Sleep on the floor in our cots, and we can't leave it there. We could move it, or we could save it and put it somewhere else. You may want to give them those alternatives, but what we don't want to do is say, okay, you can keep playing today. And of course, we get on their level. We may offer that child who's having a tantrum a hug, the ability to hold our hands, a back rub, or that child might need some space if you have a getaway space in your environment. And we're going to dig deeper into that next week. Or a space to express their feelings through art or some other medium outside or later. Sometimes music can help them. The ability to do what we call contract and release. So for some children, that may be squeezing something like Play-Doh, which isn't that effective. Wax and dough they're more denser. For some children, it could just be, and a lot of teachers have now this space where you push on the wall with your hands. And I met this one teacher where her children don't push on the wall with their hands. They push on the floor with their hands and their feet crawl up the wall as just a different way for them to, connect the calm. So a tantrum and a meltdown, really, really different. We're about to take a break. But before we take the break, I want you to see this. I know some of you have seen this. This is on YouTube. Just think around, how might you stop this child from having this tantrum? How might you stop this child from having this tantrum? So why don't we just I see you're definitely Michelle Gilbert. I'm not sure that, I didn't say that. I'm not sure if I heard someone say that, but I definitely agree with this different around keeping them safe at school, which is really different than that car accident, which we have no control over. And sometimes even at school, we're limited around the ability to follow through on how we can and will keep children safe. So thank you for that. But in this video, this kid is definitely having a tantrum. How might you stop the tantrum? All right, I see kids are very smart, educated about providing space to the child. He's crying for attention, just attention. The filming them obviously isn't helping. He's feeding off the attention. When you're ready, you can come to me. His needs should be met. Ignore him. Create a safe environment for the child to have their tantrum and let them act out the tantrum until they are tired. Notice him and provide empathy. You offer a hug. I would sit near the child and reassure them that you can hear them crying. And when they are ready, they can come to me or call my name. I would not laugh. I might sing softly a favorite song softly, pick the child up, acknowledge the child's face and what they are doing, talk to him about his needs. You really need me now. That's awesome. Co-regulate, sit with him, offer a hug. Tell him that when he is ready, we can talk. Notice him, validate their feelings. It will stop by themselves, acknowledge him, soothing, calm voice. help him label the emotion, give him attention, and get to his eye level. I'm planning to go outside. Do you want to come with me? I'm not going with somebody crying. I should not be laughing. Acknowledging, I see you're upset about something. What do we need? I can help you when you're ready. Give him words to express his feelings. Ask, are you okay? Adult breathing to download calm to the child and help him regulate. I'll sit and role model deep breathing. If it doesn't work, I'll validate his feelings and let him know I'm here to help when ready. I read some awesome ones there. There were some folk who were definitely spot on. So here's what we know. And then I can't make people do anything. All I can do is share information around what we're finding out. That even though it's a tantrum, if it becomes prolonged stress, that prolonged stress of him crying, even if it's a need of him saying, I wanted more milk or I wanted another cookie, and he's being told no, because the boundary and the limit is an effective technique. But the prolonged crying, if it's prolonged and severe, can cause disruptions in his developing brain. So that's how I think we should see it around. Then do I want that to happen? I clearly see he wants my attention, and I need to ask myself, what's stopping me from giving him my attention? And some of us still have that traditional mindset of, if you give children attention, they become spoiled. Remember I told you in session 1, milk spoils, not young children. I got that from my granny. And I firmly believe it. So I would try to figure out, what's the unmet need? How can I connect to the child? Even if what he wants, he can't get, but the need of connecting with me, he can receive. That would be my goal. That would be my goal. Because what I wouldn't want, because here's the other thing, that these types of behaviors, why it seems funny, because it is somewhat funny, but children are learning when they're doing this. So if he's learning, I can run around the house and scream, I can fall out. And eventually, 2 things are going to happen. He might tire himself out if you're lucky enough, if it doesn't take long enough. Or eventually, some adult in the house is going to get tired of it and want to respond. So then you're creating this cycle that he starts to internalize. I need to act this way and do these things to get attention. Time and attention are strategies. They're not negative, they're positive. So as the adult, I would be trying to connect with him, to connect the calm, even if I wasn't going to give him what he was crying about. So just hold that in mind. But thank you all for your shares. So provide everybody with is a little break. So if you pay attention to the screen, we're just trying to keep us all healthy during this COVID time. That if we're sitting for an hour, it starts to do damage. So we just like to give you a 10-minute break to get up, go to the bathroom, move around, get some air if you can, depending on where you are. But to take 10 minutes to stand up and move around. And my clock says what time is it, Beth?
It's 11:33 here.
11:33. So we'll come back in 10 minutes.
Okay, so 11:43. And people, you can turn off your camera if you want, and then that way we'll know you're back. So you can, when you come back on, we'll see you again. And I encourage, here, I'll turn on my camera, a little shaking it out, shaking, stretching, all that stuff. So get ourselves moving. We'll see you back in 10 minutes.
All right, I'm here. Thank you, Beth, for that friendly reminder. All right, if you can hear me, you might want to come back now. We're about to resume. We're about to resume. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Martha. You're welcome, Michelle. Most of you are sitting. I've been standing the whole time, so I don't need that type of break. But what we find is actually when we sit for 60 minutes, it's not very healthy for our bodies. And because many of us are who historically are moving around all day in early childhood, we're now sitting for very long periods of time for a variety of reasons. Lots of programs are having Zoom trainings within their own program, and teachers are doing PDs outside. So we just want to make sure everyone had the opportunity to move around. So thank you all and welcome back. We're going to start. So I just want to welcome you all back with a quote. I lost my train of thought right there. From another person who I follow in those stress and trauma circles. He's a Canadian doctor, Dr. Mate, and what he said was, children need to be mirrored when they come to you. You want to be that clear mirror so the most important work for you is with yourself. That may sound familiar to some of you as we've been singing this song all of our time together. It starts and stops with us as a part of reducing and limiting children's stress and trauma exposure. So now we're just going to jump right into a few slides around activities that build emotional vocabulary experiences. So here, this teacher took pictures of different children and they made an activity where you use the 6 universal emotions and children could stick label the emotion on the picture as a classroom activity. Now here, these are 2 teachers who I actually had the opportunity to coach, Miss Rita and Miss Alice, who were with Oakland Unified's preschool program for a number of years. I think one retired and one is still there. I'm not sure. But anyway, what they did was they actually took 8 pictures. They used the basic 8 emotions and the basic 6 emotions and added 2 more. And they took 8 photos of every single child, very nice photos, laminated them and put them on rings. And each child had a copy in their cubby. And what they did was when children were having experiences, they could go get their own photos, see them, and then have a discussion about them. That was one way I saw them being used. Another way was I saw them bringing them to circle and then doing circle time activities. But they put a lot of work and effort into it. And I saw the result. Well, they specifically talk about the results that they had with 2 young children by focusing so much on labeling emotions. Here on the left side, this is just cardboard cutouts that a teacher made where children could put the bottom and the top half of faces together. Just experiences is what it's all about. On the right, it's an emotions game of matching as another way to engage children in small groups that teachers would definitely participate in. And of course, our good friend in the Bay Area, Feelings Flashcards, Mr. Todd Carr. And on the right, the Get Along series, which I personally like from Sherry. And there's a CD now, and I actually have all the books. And I'll just tell you all this. So as you purchase books, it's really important to, specifically socio-emotional books. I'm going to just call a thing. The Free Spirit Publishers, I like them. I appreciate the fact that she did a fantastic job with these books. I think they're very diverse, they're preschool oriented, and at the back of the book, there are reflection questions for the teachers. But they have some other books on social-emotional learning that I think are highly flawed in terms of the text, the pictures, what they're presenting to young children. I think they completely missed the boat. But with this collection, I don't believe they missed the boat. And I believe it had a lot to do with who the author was. So you just have to be mindful as you're picking books. The title may seem nice, the color and the pictures may seem nice, but if it's not conveying the right message, and if you don't know, you could be presenting children with the complete wrong message in your attempt to support them. Here, very similar activities. On the left, they're using stones that were painted with facial features like eyes and nose and lips, and children can come and make it. And as you can see, there's a mirror right behind it. On the right, using loose parts to create faces in a similar way, but with loose parts. Here, just felt faces the children can make. I have that, but I actually have mine in brown. And then the Move Bear, which I found online, and thought it was neat. And I showed it to some teachers, and they actually started making, she took pictures of all the kids, and instead of it being the bear, it was actual children. I just couldn't find the picture. I know I have it somewhere, which I thought was really, really neat as another way to get and teach and label emotions. Here, using nature to do it, and of course, just cut up roles. These teachers can be really creative in terms of multiple ways to get at this. This one is really important around, and we're going to dig more into this next week, on the importance of sequencing and teaching. So here, this Oakland Unified TK teacher had first step to fifth step on what to do. And then on the far right is just the sequencing of, you know, how to blow bubbles. And we can take for granted that children know how to do these things, but sometimes children who haven't been taught or who've had a lot of stress at ages 2, 3, and 4, they've never been taught these things that we may have taught our children or that we've taken for granted. And of course, story stones, which are some of my favorite. What I often do when I use these with young children that I work with, I present them and then I tell a short story and really talk about the face and helping them recognize the face and the cues, and then offer them the opportunity to tell and retell and retell and retell stories, which is what this is about. These right here are actually, Leah, I just realized I didn't put them in the folder and I was supposed to. So you might need to remind me, Leah, to put this in the folder. These are actually, I found some, but they were all of white children. So because I serve such a diverse group of children, I remade them and had some friends help me use a variety of shades and children that I've added. So what you do is you print them out in color and you laminate the sheets, and they can become Play-Doh mats for children to use Play-Doh to make different faces. And I've seen that children really enjoy them. So this will be in the Dropbox folder.
Yeah, we'll be sure to send that out.
Thank you, Beth. And here, this is what you didn't see in Whitney's class earlier in Oakland, of how her children talk about feelings and emotions. They do a check-in, and then she just supports them, and then they kind of sign in and write their name, and that happens every single day. And in Michelle's class, they do a sort of check-in of the bigger day, and that's when feelings and emotions become a part of the program in a global way. And the last one for that section is, I saw a teacher in Berkeley, actually, who purchased 2 of these, which many of us had in our classrooms. And I never thought to do this. She purchased 2 and then she cut them up. And when she cut them up, she turned them into matching games, as a way for her to sit with small groups of children, play the matching game and talk about the feeling and the emotion and name it and tell stories about it, which I thought was a real ingenious way. Another resource that's available to you is my social emotional Pinterest page, which has tons and tons of, a lot of things you see are there, and then it gives you instructions on how to make them if you actually go there. So that's available to you also. And the Pinterest address is right there. So now we're going to stop. Well, I'm going to stop for a moment, and we're going to take our first poll. So a poll is going to pop up on the screen, and I think there are 5 or 6 questions, right, Leah?
There are actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 answers. I'm not sure how many polls there are.
No, right, that's what I meant. There's one poll, six questions in that one poll.
6 answers to the question.
You're right, Beth. You're right. We're saying the same thing a different way.
So shall I launch it?
Oh, please. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was Leah. Thank you, Beth. Please launch it. I see it on the screen. Which of the following reflections do you find useful in supporting stressed children? There are 6 to pull from. We'll give everyone an opportunity to, I see the answers are coming in back.
Yes, me too. It's very interesting.
I see one is clearly in the lead.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think people are just about done. Give it about 15 more seconds and then we'll end the poll.
Okay.
Okay, looks like we're done.
Thank you, Beth. So you should all see on the screen that what took the lead from the very beginning was your ideas about working towards understanding the stressed child. So which of the following reflections do you find useful in supporting stressed children? So a huge part of the audience said your ideas around understanding the stressed child is an important part. So that's good to know, Beth, around the audience and what definitely sticks out. So thank you all for that. So I would like to hear maybe from one person who wants to unmute themselves and others who voted for that to share in the chat room why that one stuck out to you and what your thinking is behind it. I would really like to hear that. Someone can unmute themselves and everyone else can put in the chat room. And it looked like around 50 something people responded to that one. Okay, it looks like Ruth unmuted themselves.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Ruth Santiago. I've had stressed children in my room before. And my thing about that is when they come into your room.
Oops. Wonder if we lost you, Ruth. We heard you say when they come into my room and then we lost your voice. Uh-oh.
Raggedy phone. I'm going to the phone funeral.
Okay.
Are you still there?
Yes, we're there.
When children first come into your room, let's say school starts and they come in and you could see the stress and they don't want to separate from the parents. They don't want to play with the kids. They don't want to relate to you and you're wondering, well, what's going on? They came in like that while everybody else around them is just being playful and trying to make friends and sharing with the toys and not sharing with the toys.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important for you to know in the beginning, what are you receiving? Those folders that come to you with the information on family and children, you really have to read up on who's coming to your classroom.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everybody thinks that they know children because they love children. They've worked with children for years, but every case is different. And you have to know about the family background, who you're getting, what's going on. Then you have to make that relationship with that family happen too. You have to work towards it. It just can't happen overnight because sometimes you get people who don't want.
Whoops, we kind of lost you a little bit there, Ruth. I'd love to hear what you're saying because if I had young children, I'd want you to be their teacher.
That's right, Beth. I agree.
She's got a wonderful voice.
Hello.
Hi.
You have to read the signs.
Yeah.
Just a little bit at a time. Just make your way. One way of talking with the family is likes and dislikes. What does she like? So you do have to have help from the family to help you to help that child. And then just slowly, not push your way in, just, maybe sit by her, maybe they're doing a project and you can start a conversation with other children about
We lost you again. Darn this technology. I
I
understand.
know. Everyone in the chat box is saying they agree with you and love what you're saying.
Yes, absolutely. We think you're really right on.
You're spot on.
Am I there?
Yes,
Am I there yet?
you are there.
Hello?
Hi.
Am I there?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So as I was saying, just um,
Oh, Ruth, we want
Ruth, we thank you.
we're gonna
Maybe
have to move on.
Maybe you can put the rest of what you're saying in the chat box, Ruth, because everyone really enjoyed it, but you're breaking up and we can't hear the rest. But thank you so much for that share.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. People are saying, Ms. Ruth, you're amazing. So we all want to be in your class. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all who put that in the chat. It's just nice to know what people are thinking related to their responses, and it seems like we're all on the same page. And next week we're going to explore stress in the context of the family. So I like that Ruth put us on the path for what we're going to explore next week. So we're coming up. We probably have 5 slides left, Beth. And stop sharing the results.
Let's see I'm gonna.
Is that you working with the poll, Beth?
Yep, it should be gone.
All right. So just another educator stress story. I've been sharing stress stories from real teachers each week. So this week I'm going to read Tim's stress story, which is really brand new. Tim said, since we started the new school year this last week, which was a week ago, has been nothing less than different. Everything is different. Families don't enter the building. It seems like 50% of the day is spent cleaning and washing. We've always washed hands, materials, and surfaces, but now it's in overdrive. I'm noticing I think about the end of the day all day long. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy teaching and being with my preschoolers. It just feels like the stress of the world is on my back. Many of my coworkers either quit or got doctor's notes to stay home. How did I go from being an undervalued, unappreciated, low-paid teacher to a quote-unquote essential worker overnight? I had no say in the matter. This is stressful. The coach said she was starting a learning community. We need a support group, not a learning community. Tim, early childhood teacher. So what I want you to do now is what we've done before, share in the chat, and maybe 2 brave souls that want to share by unmuting yourself. Do you agree or disagree with Tim? If yes, tell us why. If you agree or disagree with Tim, and tell us why. You can post in the chat box, of course, and maybe 2 people who want to unmute themselves to share so we can hear your voice and connect that way. We would appreciate that. Okay, so it looks like Sonia unmuted herself again over 100 people in the call. Let's hear from you, Sonia. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, that's me again. I mean, I totally agree with what you say, that instead of learning group, we need a support group, because we had our summer school, it was only 3 Fridays, and we divide the kids in groups. So we have only like 3 sections of 5 kids, you know, at a time in those sections, like 2 hours per group. And it was like, even though it was less kids, it was so stressful as me having 22 kids, because I spend most of the time, you know, cleaning. I put a bucket, everything you touch, you know, you play with and you're done with, please put it in this bucket so, you know, it can be disinfected, it can be clean. And, you know, kids that don't play long with stuff, they like, touch it, mingle around a little bit, and then, okay, move to another thing. And it was like, oh my God, I spent all those, I mean, I can tell 6 hours just cleaning and like less, integrating with kids. It's like, this is not fun. It's really stressful. It's like you really need an extra people just to be cleaning, just to be on, disinfecting stuff, for us teachers to be, with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's very stressful.
Thank you, Sonia. That was spot on. Appreciate that. And we see that Lorena said we still have not had children, but we are already having difficulties with the environment. And Michelle Gilbert wrote from my good buddy, Dr. Bruce Perry, said that educators are starting the school year emotionally fatigued. He talked about the importance of giving yourself extra time, extra grace, extra compassion, extra self-care, and permission to do less in the moment. I love that last part, permission to do less in the moment. And someone said, yes, it's true, support group is very important. And someone else said, I'm with him because he wants to work while others have excuses. He loves what he's doing. The group will need more support to stay with a positive attitude. Awesome. Okay, so it sounds like most people are on the same page there, Beth. Thank you all so much for that.
Yeah.
So Sonia, looks like you won again for sharing. So when you get me that email. So now I just want to share with you a few ways in terms of strategies to support children as we come up on the conclusion of our time together. So one way, and this is our research base, and most of this actually comes from Dr. Bruce Perry, that we need to design lessons that include music and movement and positive interactions as a strategy to support stressed young children and teachers. So really integrating music and movement into what you're doing is a strategy. So that doesn't mean we do music and movement on Tuesday and Thursday, or we do music and movement on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It should be an integral part of your curriculum every single day, inside and outside. That next one was to provide intensive physical activities like running, climbing, and dancing. And Ms. Deborah Nasir Adams, who's an City of Oakland Head Start teacher, really did this. These are her children. She set up a tumbling and a rolling, the deep, big body physical activities in their very small yard. And she talked about seeing a difference in behavior. Now what she's doing now is you see him running to tumble. So she kind of wanted to be there, but you see children behind her who didn't need to be monitored that way. But allowing them that opportunity, she saw how it connected, directly to their behavior by being brave and saying, we've never done this before, but I'm going to pull these mats out of the shed, we're going to clean them off, and we're going to use them. And of course, another strategy is about making emotional connections first and content second. Always the emotional connection is what we want to make first, and then we get to the content. And Dr. Perry says we need to remind children of when things are going well early and often, remind them of what's going well. And that's exactly what Janelle is doing at the lunch table down in Gilroy, reminding children of what is going well. And each one of these frames and stories has a lot of backdrop to it. And it's just, I can't share each one in detail, but many of these children have stories that are stress stories, and the teachers are doing awesome jobs in supporting them. And then of course, Margarita Batista, who is actually the teacher who works with Rebecca Courtney, who you saw earlier, this notion of pairing verbal and visual directions, and we talked about that earlier. We don't just talk, but we show them and we demonstrate what we're doing. So here we just see during circle, they were doing music and movement. Margarita's demonstrating with the children the expected behavior as a strategy to reduce and lessen stress. We're coming up on the end, Beth. We have, 1, 2, 3 slides left, folks. Thank you all for holding on. So here, this strategy around teach the skill. We're going to watch a short clip of family childcare owner in Oakland, California, Miss Valerie Hamilton, who I believe is actually on the call. I saw her name jump up. I don't know if she's still there or not. But you're going to see her, and I'm not going to share a bunch of his story, but this was one of the children who came into a family child care home, and a lot was going on at home. He was cared for, but his parent would say, he doesn't sleep at night, and we're asleep and we wake up and he's awake and he hasn't gone to sleep, and we give him the tablet, and there was just a lot of things that showed up around. You're going to hear some in his language expression. But watch Ms. Val, she's present, she's there, they're doing back and forth. Notice what he's reading when you listen to the back and forth. There's lots of nomenclature, lots of language, lots of repeating. Even though he's in preschool, some of the behaviors would be what we would classify, as not meeting those benchmarks in some areas, but then in other areas, he would exceed the developmental marker for his age. And those are often signs of stress that sometimes are delays for some children. Sometimes they could be a potential disability that hasn't been diagnosed. And we're not doing that right here in the context of supporting him. We're just trying to find out more so that when he's here, she was able to support him. So let's watch now.
I think that's water.
No, that's the ocean.
The ocean. Oh, yes, you're right. That is the ocean.
And look, this is a seal. And this is a submarine.
Ooh, who's in that submarine? Huh? Beetles? Not people?
No.
Beetles? What kind of beetles are in there? See those windows? Those are windows in the submarine. So who's driving the submarine?
The driving beetle.
The driving beetle?
Yeah.
Oh.
He's the biggest beetle.
He's the biggest one?
Yeah.
Wow.
He plays with
He plays with your arm?
No, you play with drumsticks.
Oh, he plays with drums? Oh, the Beatles?
Yeah.
Are you talking about the Beatles that sing?
Yeah.
What kind of song do they sing? Rock and roll. Wow. What, do you know one of their songs?
Yeah.
Tell me one of their songs. A drum, and they drum and say it's been a long. You know one of their songs? Yes, you like those?
You saw my video?
Yeah. And the microphone?
It's the kind of thing that makes your voice loud.
Oh, yes, the microphone is the kind of thing that makes your voice louder. Yes. Huh? Oh, I'll come over in a minute, sweetie. Huh? Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, baby. What is that? What do propellers do?
They hurt so we go.
They do what?
They hurt so we go.
Oh, they go around and around?
What's this?
I don't know. What is that? A what? A what? Oh. And what does that do? Oh, it looks around and sees who's on the top of the water? Oh.
And what's this?
I don't know. What is that?
A catfish.
A catfish?
No, a kissfish.
A kiss fish? Oh my goodness. And what's that? It is a shark.
They have 20 feet. And what's this? And what's this?
What is that?
Octopus.
Wow.
And what's this?
How many legs does that octopus have?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Oh, and one more. 8. Yes.
And what? It has windows?
Yes, it does have windows.
It is a phone.
It is a boat.
This is duck.
Oh, duck. What is a duck sound? Can you make a duck sound?
Quack, quack.
Wow, that's a great duck sound.
What's this?
That is
A boat.
a boat that's doing what? It's catching what?
A fish.
Yes, a boat that catches fish.
All right, so as you can see, there was lots of back and forth, lots of what we call serve and return. And even though you can hear his articulation isn't always very, very clear, he has a lot to express and a lot to share. And what Ms. Valerie Hamilton does is she remains there. But all the other children, the other 13 children are, you know, Miss May, I can hear her in the background with them, and they're engaged. But he needed her to be there because what he wasn't doing was really playing with the other children, which is always a sign that as the adult, remember we said we're that first entry point. He needs me because he's not ready to be with him. And she does an awesome job of providing that as strategy. So Ms. Val, you are the winner today of the next gift card just because everybody's saying how brilliant you are. So the gift card is yours. I know she's there. I saw her name in the chat. She's being shy. So we have one last poll before my closing goodbyes. One final poll, Beth, of takeaways for participants. Oh, here it is. So what should be on your screen should say, what was your most important takeaway today? Personal stress management, learning and teaching emotional vocabulary activities for stressful play, or how to teach new skills.
Looks like people are completing the poll.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do about 15 more seconds.
Okay.
Looks like it's slowing down, so. Okay. I'm going to end the poll.
Okay. So, all right, Beth. So on my screen, it looks like in the lead by one vote was emotional vocabulary activities for stressful play. And right behind that was learning and teaching emotional vocabulary. And then behind that was personal stress management. And then how to teach new skills. Awesome. Thank you all for that. It's always helpful for us to know what you share, what you believe and think. So in closing, you know, your takeaway were those 4 big pieces of, as we continue to put these pieces together, figuring out what piece goes where for children in stress. And it's not always easy, it's ongoing and continuous. And remember, we can seek help for this work. We can seek out help from our peers, seek out help from places like Help Me Grow at First 5 Alameda, or wherever you're located, your resource or referral. We all can become more reflective in this aspect of work. And as we started in the beginning, when you need to take a break, step back, get yourself some air, go for a walk, a cup of coffee, a glass of water, tea, a phone call to a good friend. Sometimes, you know, it might be swiping through some funny Twitter post, whatever it is that will make you smile and make you laugh, and to release those chemicals that need to be released for you to reset and regroup so that we can show up for ourselves first, to be self-full, so that we can support children and families along this journey. So thank you all again for following along and getting through week 3. Next week will be week 4. Don't forget, you're going to get an evaluation link. So please complete that evaluation link. And as some people have to go, but if anyone has any closing questions, that they feel like they want answered, I'll be here for a minute to answer those questions for you if you still have a question. So thank you all.
Thank you, Shawn, so much. Appreciate it so much. And we'll be having part 4 of this training a week from today. And we will also be offering what we're calling a virtual office hour. We'll figure out what date and time that's going to be. Follow up and have an opportunity for you all to ask Shawn some other questions. So, and you're welcome to unmute yourself if you want and ask a question. We've got some more time here if you want to do that. So, or put them in the chat box.
Yes, there will, Joy. I see a question, but it came just to me. After part 4, there are always training. So when you signed up, you should be getting the updates to the trainings from Leah, the trainings in First 5. One of the things that we're going to be doing is offering the National Mind in the Making for People, which is a 4-part training, which so much of our training in California has been about trauma and stress and ACEs, which is great. So now we're going to the top part of the brain, the executive center of the brain, and looking at what's happening there and what do we need to do to affect that part of the brain. So Mind in the Making, which was actually funded by the Bezos Foundation, and they gave the National Head Start office in Washington, D.C. a bunch of money to train a bunch of people across the country. And I was lucky enough to get in on the very last one to become a national trainer. So First 5 and Beth have been gracious enough to say, we want to do a few things. And the first thing they're doing is offering that to the community. And it'll be a 4-part training, a little different than this one. This one we opened up to people so you could come to one and not the other. The difference, Joy, with that one is they build on each other. So when you sign up for one, you're signing up for all 4. That's the one difference. But and the second difference is we're really going to be drilling down on the executive functioning skills and what things should we be doing for children at school and at home or in community to build those executive functioning skills. And I'm excited about it. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, we are too. We're really excited about it. So more information will be coming out about that. Go ahead.
There is a recording of the, I'm responding to questions. There is a recording of the first training. If you go to YouTube, First 5 Alameda, at least everything I do for them is posted there because I just want people to always have access to it. But the very first training in this series and the second one, they're posted on First 5 Alameda County's YouTube page. Yep.
And I'm putting a link in the chat right now to our YouTube channel so people can go there and see all the different trainings we have.
Oh, thank you, Beth. That's awesome. She works so fast with those keys. I'm just so envious. Yeah. And there are some other trainings happening around family engagement, and Dr. Stroud is coming up and doing some more, and lots of other folks. But for those who, once you sign up, I believe once you signed up for this one, you should be on the email tag to get updates. So if you're not getting them, check your spam because they may have gone there.
A lot goes into your spam or your junk, so be sure to check that out. Someone's going to ask on how to support kids with trauma like DV or those who are having to leave their countries due to war, gangs, violence, or the worst. Yeah, we've been doing a lot of training on trauma, and so I'm sure that's one. The one that we have coming up with Dr. Stroud is going to be on using early childhood mental health tenets to think about trauma. So that one's, and please, the best place for you to put those ideas too is in the evaluation. So we have a sense. And you might also check with the different R&Rs with the trainings that are happening through 4Cs, Bananas, and also Hively, that they do trainings on trauma as well that are quite good.
That's true. Thank you, Beth.